Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing why you miss them so badly. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing why you miss them so badly. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you'll probably be thinking about them 24/7. But why is this? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 reasons why you miss your ex-dumper so badly. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is there is nothing more attractive than rejection. So if you find yourself in the position where your relationship has ended and you were dumped, one of the first thoughts you're likely to have is, why am I not good enough for that person? Why am I not good enough for the person that said they loved me, possibly very, very recently, but certainly further back in time, you would have likely been told that they loved you. You may have been married, you may have lived together, you may have had children together as well. You probably felt you would be together forever. So, if you now find out that your relationship is ending, if you've been dumped, if you recognize and realize that they don't feel enough romantic emotional attraction for you, you're likely to think to yourself, what's wrong with me? What's happened? Why don't they like me anymore? Now, it's this type of thought process which inadvertently pushes your ex-dumper onto a pedestal. It pushes them into a position of power, a position of strength. They've made a decision that they wanted to take place, and it's happened. They wanted to end the relationship, and it has actually happened. Your thoughts, your feelings, seemingly, don't matter to your ex. That is how you view this. What they want, they get. What you want doesn't happen. And therefore, within the confines of this relationship dynamic, you unfortunately have less power, less value within the situation. Your ex is the powerful one, and you find yourself on the weaker side of the equation. So when we consider this, we can understand why rejection breeds obsession. Because you have been rejected, the relationship is over. Whether or not they've actually said harsh words towards you, in the back of your mind, in your subconscious, you feel rejection. And if you've been rejected, this means that you don't feel good enough. You don't feel good enough for them. And if you don't feel good enough, then they must be better than you. And that is where the theory of there is nothing more attractive than rejection. You've been rejected, and therefore you see them as something to desire, to crave, something better than you, something you can't quite reach. They're just out of your reach. And therefore they must be fantastic, they must be amazing, they must be better than yourself. Now, of course, none of this is true. Now, you may have potentially made some mistakes. You're a human being. We all make mistakes. I've made mistakes in my life. You possibly made mistakes in this relationship, and I'm sure your ex-dumper did as well. Now, whether or not you made a huge mistake, which created a loss of romantic emotional attraction, well, again, we're human. You can apologize, and we can see how things can hopefully develop from there. I can't guarantee you'll get your ex back, but obviously apologizing for something significant you've done wrong is the right thing to do. It's the right move. But more often than not, this is not down to a single situation where the dumpee has done something wrong. You know, we can look at many breakup dynamics where the dumper, could it be argued, has actually done more wrong than the dumpee, but they have decided to cut ties, and therefore this whole rejection breeds obsession situation will still occur. So it doesn't matter whether you feel you've done something significantly wrong or not. The reality is that whoever is to quote-unquote blame for the loss of romantic emotional attraction, we find ourselves in the scenario where we have a dumper and a dumpee, and the power balance is no longer equal. We no longer have the scales of value finely balanced and even. We don't see that anymore. And sadly, as a dumpee, you will feel there is nothing more attractive than rejection. You will feel that because they rejected you, they must be better than you. And if they are better than you, then you will do anything you can to get them back, because they must be amazing. They must be 10 out of 10. They must be someone who you don't deserve to have. You start to lose and reduce your level of self-esteem and self-confidence, because if they can reject me, then I can't be that great. That is the concept. And that faulty thinking can really lead into a lot of mental health challenges. Now, whether or not you get your ex back, you can and will live a happy, exciting, fulfilling life within a loving relationship, I'm absolutely sure. Hopefully, if you want your ex back, this is something which could happen for you. But whether you do, whether you don't, I'm confident you can find somebody even better if you decide to change course, becoming a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday, and a better person tomorrow than you are currently today will put you in that position to either get your ex back or find someone even better. But when we're asking ourselves, why do I miss my ex so badly? Point number one is there is nothing more attractive than rejection, and rejection breeds obsession. So now let's get into point number two and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number two is fantasy. So again, we're thinking about and talking about, why do you miss your ex so badly? They dumped you. They broke your heart. Why do you miss them so badly? Well, point number two is fantasy. And this is because when your ex-dumper is no longer part of your life, there is a huge void in your mindset. And what happens when there is a void? Well, your brain will start to fill in those blanks. Your brain will start to remember what it wants to remember. And in this theory, what we will see is that fantasy will actually surpass reality. We will see something take place referred to as the fading effect bias. Now, this is something which can actually help you eventually, hopefully, get your ex back. But in regards to you and your current situation, it will sadly play against you. And that is the thought and concept that negative memories fade sooner over time in comparison to positive memories. What this means is the positive memories of you and your ex as a whole, will shine through much brighter and much longer than the negative scenarios that you would have encountered together. In particular, and obviously, the breakup is going to be very painful, very poignant, and possibly the last interaction you've had. So you might think, well, surely that is going to shine brightest. Well, no. Due to the fading effect bias, as time ticks by, you will not be thinking of that with as much power and depth as you remember them in a positive light. And this is where things can get really confusing in your mind, because fantasy will start to surpass reality. Not only will you be thinking of the good times together more than the actual breakup itself, but you will be thinking to yourself that they were a better person, treating you in a better way, you enjoying your life more excited and fascinating and wonderful than it actually was. You will look back at your relationship and rate it a 10 out of 10, when in reality, it might have been a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7. It could even be much, much lower, 2, 3, or 4, which is why, of course, sadly, your relationship did come to an end. We have to recognize that when we are filling in those gaps in our mindset, it is not often or even likely to be reality. You put your ex on a pedestal. You're seeing and viewing, and more importantly, feeling the fantasy of what actually took place, because it didn't necessarily pan out the way you envision. You probably speak about your ex now to friends and family in such a glowing way that they have to remind you and say, hey, I don't think that's quite how it happened. Can't you remember how they made you feel last year? Can't you remember what they said to you? Can't they remember how you referred to how they were looking and you didn't find them physically attractive? Why now do you speak about them like they are a god or a goddess? Why do you speak about them now as if they are the best person you've ever met in your life? Don't you remember that you were saying that you might consider ending the relationship yourself? Don't you remember you considering actually dumping them? And these thoughts and feelings need to be things which are told to you so you can remember them. You need to be reminded, because more often than you might think, The line between dumper and dumpee is very thin, it's very narrow. A dumpee could often have actually been the dumper. In an alternative reality, in an alternative line of events, maybe you as a dumpee could have been the one to pull the plug and end the relationship. Sometimes the line is that fine. So don't kid yourself. Don't say to yourself this relationship was the best relationship anybody has ever experienced within history. It sadly wasn't. It has sadly come to an end. You may get your ex back, but let's not get tricked and tripped into falling into fantasy. The reality is that your ex the dumper wasn't perfect, isn't perfect, and if you get them back, you won't find them perfect either. But right now, they're not in your life, they're not in your space, they're not in your orbit, so you are creating and developing a fantasy of what you believe they are. You are almost creating an avatar of what you want them to be rather than who they were. And sadly, they rejected you. Sadly, they ended a relationship. But that does not mean they were perfect. It does not mean they were good to you. It does not mean they were right for you. So if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and my final point of today's podcast about why you miss them so badly. And point number 3 is there is now a romantic gap. So right now you are a single person. You have been dumped. You want your ex back. But why do you miss them so badly? Well, one of the most important reasons, and point number 3, is because there is now a romantic gap. You don't have romance in your life right now. You don't have dating right now. You don't have somebody who you feel loves you in a romantic way right now. Yes, you hopefully have friends and family who love you very much. But we all know when we are in the position of a dumpee that type of love is not the same. It's not enough. It doesn't give you what you want. You could be in a room full of people who love you, but you can still feel alone because you don't feel that romantic love that you crave. And this is one of the reasons why you miss your ex but dumper so badly. It's because you have this romantic gap. And until it's filled, you will feel that you want them back into your life because you see them as the only one who can give you that type of love. Now, that isn't the case. That isn't true. I do believe you can find someone even better than your ex. But unless this person materializes, you're not going to believe me. And if they don't come into your life, then you will continue to crave your ex even more. You'll be thinking to yourself, nobody matches my ex. Nobody can make me feel the way my ex did. And therefore, unless they're in your life, you will crave, you will desire, you will miss them. And hence, that is why you feel desperate towards getting them back right now. Now, can you get your ex back? Yes. A lot of the time, if a dumpee does enough of the right things, they can get their ex back. Whether or not that's the right decision to make, that is a different question. You sometimes need to be careful what you wish for. But this isn't always possible, and a dumpee cannot always get their ex back. And if they don't and if they can't, you need to be open to the possibility of finding someone even better. You can do it. Now, you might not believe you can. You might think, I don't want to. I want my dumper back. I don't want anybody else in my life. Well, if you feel this way, then you are going to be craving, desiring, putting your ex on a pedestal, and ultimately probably crossing the line to chasing them because you don't believe you can find happiness in any other way. You can't do this. You can't behave like this. If you end up chasing your ex, you will likely chase them further away from you. You can't get your ex back like that. You can't get your happiness back like that. The best way to attract your ex, ironically, is to focus on you, yourself, and considering new connections, dating new people, living your life in a way where you are open to a new possibility. If you do this, not only will you increase the chance of finding someone even better, of finding somebody else to fill the relationship gap, the romance gap, the love gap that you feel right now, But by taking your energy away from your ex, you inadvertently, ironically, start to grow romantic emotional attraction in their mind towards you. So if you actually want your ex back, one of the best things you can do is try to start dating new people. And it really is win-win. You will either get your ex back or you will find somebody even better. So until you fill the romance gap, you will always crave the last time you felt romance. And this is why one of the most important reasons you feel that you miss your ex so badly. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.